And good afternoon. A beautiful Tuesday. Our spring day for the week. Going to be up to around 80 today, and the wind blowing like a monsoon, and then back down to 50 tomorrow. So it'll be interesting. But enjoy it while you can. Stay around, listen to us. History Museum on the square, bring you stories of the crossroads. History Museum is open Wednesday through Saturday from 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and on Sunday from 1 to 5, except this week. This week, because of spring break, we're open Monday and Tuesday as well, so we're open today till 5. But then we'll be open our regular hours for the rest of the week. And come by and see us. We're at 154 Park Central Square. And today, I don't know what to say. We have we have a fill-in running the board, filling in for Robin, who's not here. But in her absence, we've got Rob, the chief engineer, just to ride herd on me. So if things sound bad, it's his fault. But today's guest is an old friend.
Was there one more old you wanted to throw in there?
Yeah, and maybe just an older one.
Yeah.
But an old friend and an icon of local broadcasting.
Oh man, they've lowered the bar on what an icon is. Wow.
We have today Tom Trtan.
John, it is always good seeing you.
It's great to see you. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Tom and I go way back, back to the very beginnings of time.
Yes, things were truly etched in stone when we started.
And we're going to talk to Tom today about how he got here.
Yeah.
How his how does your life short circuit to the point where you end up in a television station in Springfield, Missouri?
Well, I'm from Northwest Indiana, and I was playing in a band, 5 nights a week, making, 5 nights a week playing in a band money. And my ex-wife at the time, her father owned a clothing store here in Springfield, Cole's Clothing. And I had sold clothing in college. And he asked would I like to come work, and we kind of moved to Springfield, and I was going to work at Cole's Clothing
on the plaza.
That's the one. So I learned how to look at somebody and say, "You're a 58 triple Z," that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I've lost that talent. No,
apparently you haven't, because you're right on it.
Okay. See, it's you get the eye, and you kind of able to help people out a little bit better that way.
So you came here to sell clothes.
I did, and I was back home in Indiana. I had to do a voiceover. I went home, and I knew a guy with a studio there. We did the voiceover there, brought it back. The person who we were doing a commercial, it's a tanning salon here in Springfield, used to exist. They said, "Oh, we don't like it. That sounds terrible. You need to do it over." Well, it's Sunday, and it has to run Monday. So we're trying to, and Ralph Plank. I'm sure you know Ralph Plank.
Absolutely.
Been doing audio forever in this city.
Voice work and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, his studio was open. He said, "Yeah, sure, come on in." Now, it was a Sunday evening. Mm-hmm. We did it. It got on and in time and started playing on the radio. A few weeks later, one of the managers at Color 10, Larry Blackerby, was looking for a station announcer. He called Ralph Plank. He said, "Do you know anyone who could do this?" And Ralph went, "Yeah, I met a guy a couple of weeks ago," and he gave him my number. They called me, and that's how I got into doing what I do now.
What a fluke.
Yeah, kind of really.
That really is.
Right place at the right time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's amazing that you don't hang up the phone because someone says, "Yeah, this is Larry Blackerby with Color 10 Television." Yeah, and you hang it up. But I didn't, and that's it. The rest is
so you had no background in it at all, and just
not in television.
You were the station announcer.
I've been an actor, a singer, a musician, a hack musician, and they wanted a station announcer, and I could read and speak.
Speaking of hack musician, I saw you gave me a little write up here about your background. and I want to make sure this gets on early
Yeah,
on in the
thanks.
show.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So you became at the impetus of your parents. You became a musician, right? They wanted you to be to learn to play an instrument.
Absolutely. My mother played violin when she was young, and she loved music. My father, really loved music. He had a terrific singing voice. But yes, you need to learn music. It's a good idea.
And what did they choose for you? And what age? How old were you?
I was about 5 years old. 5 years old, and they looked everywhere at all these beautiful instruments and settled on the king of instruments, which is the accordion. Don't let anyone tell you that it's the organ. It's the accordion. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So at 5 years old, you're playing. Wasn't it as big as you were?
No, the first one is one of the little ones, and you have like maybe 12 buttons on it. But within, I would say, a year or so, I didn't want to play the accordion anymore. I said, I want to play the organ. I want a keyboard, in front of me. So they said, well, we'll see. And they called, it was Aloya's School of Music, and they called Mr. Aloya, come on and bring an organ for him to see. Well, I think Mr. Aloya was getting kickbacks on accordion because he brought one of those organs that have like maybe 12 keys and push buttons on it. And then he brought a beautiful white with silver inlay, 120 bass accordion, a grown-up accordion. And a kid that's 5 years old looks at this big shiny object and goes, yeah, that's what I want. And that's what I did. I said, yeah, that's what I want. And I continued my career on the accordion.
So were you hoping like for a future with
Lawrence Welk is the only thing you could probably.
Band of some sort?
Well, we had a lot of them where I grew up.
Well, that's true.
But, I didn't play a whole lot of polkas. I mean, I played, like the Colonel Bogey March and things like that. And I played on our local radio station a couple of times. And I did play at McCormick Place in Chicago.
The convention center?
The big, it's new now. It burned down between. I had nothing to do with it. But yeah, I played at McCormick Place. However, it was a recital, and there were probably 300 kids if there was one.
Playing all different instruments?
Accordions.
300 accordion players?
Not only that, they kind of played one at a time, and they had one of 3 songs to choose from. All right? So this went all day. And me being Tom Trtan, they went in alphabetical order. So I was way down toward the end. And by that time, these judges, I still see them, they were punch drunk. They could hardly move. They were bringing IVs in for them and everything. They were shaking because they had to listen to 300 kids play one of 3 songs on accordions. To this day, I pray for their souls.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, and what was this a benefit of some sort?
No, it was just, no. Yeah, well, it was just, a bunch of, a recital. Why? I was, 6, 7 years old. Why is because my mother took me and made me do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to have to think
I
about
still have that accordion, by the way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I bet you do. We're going to have to think about that one a little bit. And while we're doing that, we're going to have to take a break and have some messages. You're listening to History Museum Presents Stories of the Crossroads, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Stories of the Crossroads brought to you by the History Museum on the Square. We've got some things coming up. I want to let you know about those. The Queen City Quest, our big trivia night, is March 29th. You will learn so much and really be entertained. It's a lot of fun. And our host for the night is Tom Trtan, who is with us today.
Yeah,
he's going to be the host of the show there in the Fox Theater from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock on the 29th of March. And then later on, we've got some summer camps coming up. One for grades 5 through 8 called Secrets of Springfield. That'll be in June 9th through 13th. And then for grades K through 4, Springfield Civic Superheroes is July 14th through 18th. So look those up online at historymuseumonthesquare.org or give us a call at 417-831-1976 and we'll get you signed up for those. We're talking with Tom Trtan, who has been a fixture in television here since the mid-1980s and has outlasted a veritable plethora of other people.
There's some truth there.
You survived being an accordion player.
I did,
And,
barely, but yes, I did.
And then what instrument did you play after that?
Then I picked up the bass guitar.
Yeah.
And I started playing in a wedding band with my uncle, who played the mandolin, and a young lady who played, well, they call it the Cordovox. It's basically an electric accordion. So I was still side by side with an accordion, and then a guitar player and a drummer. And we played weddings. I was in a wedding band for a number of years, playing all over the Calumet region in northwest Indiana. Yeah, so that was a ball. That was one of the better times of my life.
Yeah, and that was your, while you were going to school, you're in this wedding band.
Yes, yeah. That started all when I was in my teens and into high school, and then I was in a song and dance group when I was in high school into college. So I've always been, doing something with music.
Now, did you ever aspire to go to Chicago and make the big time, or?
I did a couple of auditions in Chicago. I went to, they had an audition for Grease. And I went to that audition and I sang, and they said, well, we'd like for you to read. So I'm holding, the book. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking over the part that I'm supposed to, and I shut the book and I look at the back cover and I look at the people who are sitting out there, and they're the guys who wrote the musical Grease. It started in Chicago and then went to Broadway, and now it's coming back to Chicago. And needless to say, I didn't get the part, but it was thrilling to be there. But I have a terrible time with auditions. If I have to perform, I'll perform. But to audition, I've never enjoyed doing that. So I decided I'm going to do something else, and beside theater.
Right. And
so I did more theater.
So you did more theater. Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have a trade or anything. I did theater, some theatrical productions in northwest Indiana, and then when I made the move to, I worked at Six Flags in the early 70s, then went to Worlds of Fun, and because Worlds of Fun was in Kansas City, I auditioned to be one of the singing waiters at the Waldo Astoria, the Hoochies. Mm-hmm. And then I worked at Tiffany's Attic in Kansas City, one of the kazoos, and then I got into a couple of shows while I was there.
So you went from Western Indiana to Chicago, or to where did you were Six Flags in St. Louis?
Yes, Six Flags in St. Louis. Now I was in Chicago because I was going to school there for a little bit at the American Conservatory, right on Lakeshore Drive, and but that was a very short-lived period of my life. But then I went to St. Louis, Six Flags, and then the next summer went to Kansas City, and I stayed there for several years.
So did you waiter and do other stuff to kind of keep?
Yeah, tended bar, waited tables, sold clothing, things like that.
Just anything to keep your head above water.
Yeah, that was basically it. But playing.
So of those
bands.
places, which one do you like the best?
Out of which place?
Out of Kansas City, St. Louis, Chicago.
I like Kansas City. It was an exciting town. I mean, I haven't been back there for a few years, but when I was there, lots going on, and you had the 2 dinner theaters. Actually, you had 3. There was one, I think, called Off Broadway, but I was with Tiffany's Attic and Waldo Astoria. Those were kind of the big dogs in town, and I was just having a ball. There are certain points in your life where you go, yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What kind of shows did you do?
I did, let's see, I was in Mr. Roberts, I was in She Loves Me, so it was like comedies and musicals is what they did. And I did a show called God's Favorite with Billy Bird, who was, she was the Tackleberry's partner in the Police Academy movies. Just this little bitty old lady who was as funny as the day is long. She wrote for Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy. She literally ran away to join the circus when she was a kid. She was a vaudeville dancer, all of this kind of stuff. She could do, by her figuring, 6 hours of stand-up comedy without repeating a joke. That's Billy Bird.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, she was an extraordinary person.
Well, how old was she by the time she was working with you?
She had to be in her 60s, maybe 70s, in her 70s, and she was ageless. I can't tell you exactly because I was viewing it from a 20-something's eyes, but she used to come out to do a speech after the show, and she would do high kicks where her foot would go behind her head. She was 70 years old and more limber than I was when I was a teenager. Incredible.
That's amazing.
And funny, but the biggest heart just the sweetest lady I ever met.
All right, so you're in Kansas City.
Uh-huh.
And then what happened?
Then I went back to Northwest Indiana for a little while.
Yeah.
And that was when I was in a band. We played, this opportunity does not exist anymore.
Was
Yes.
it like a long hair band?
I never had long hair. John, when I had hair, it was very curly. So if I would grow my hair long, it would just get big. It never touched my shoulders or anything.
Okay.
It was like an afro kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't a long hair. We played kind of middle of the road, a little bit of everything. But we did something that musicians don't have, especially young ones, don't have the chance anymore. We played in one place 5 nights a week for about 3 years straight.
So you were a house band.
We were.
For what kind of a place? A dinner?
It was a dinner establishment, fine dining
Right.
downstairs, upstairs a beautiful lounge, and that's where we played.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dance music or just?
Anything, yeah. Well, they had a dance floor,
Right.
and so we would play all kinds of music, country, rock, just pop, anything. We just, see what people like to hear, and we'd kind of play it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. For 3 years?
For 3 years. 3 years. As a matter of fact, the band kind of went a little bit longer because I left to go to Kansas City.
Right.
And they stayed on probably for, I don't know, another year or so. Yeah. It was amazing.
That's a long time for a house band.
It was. I mean, and musicians don't get that chance anymore. It's like, okay, you can come in on Saturday and you get part of the gate.
Right.
And that's it. We got paid a salary every week.
Wow, that's extraordinary.
It was.
And you left there and went back to Kansas City.
Now I went to Springfield. That's when I came to Springfield.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was doing that in the early 80s and then went to Springfield.
Yeah. So you came to Springfield to sell clothes.
Mm-hmm.
What, you just because it was your father-in-law was the reason you did it, or were you wanting to change your spin on things? And
I wanted to change where I was living, and I knew that Springfield was a much better place than I was because, where I was, it was oil refineries, steel mills, things like that. And, when you've got a young child, then it was 2 when we moved, and one was still a baby, there's got to be a better place. And I knew Springfield. I mean, I'd been here.
Right.
And I still consider it a terrific place to live. I mean, there's everything that I need. The most I'd have to travel might be an hour.
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. That's cool. Yeah. We will talk some more about this.
Okay.
You're listening to History Museum presents Stories of the Crossroads. We've got a bunch of things coming up this summer. I want to tell you about a few of them now. We've got a Route 66 tour with David Eslick. That'll be a bus tour that will leave the Kentwood Arms at 1 o'clock on June 21st. If you need to sign up for that, you can give us a call at the museum and we'll get you tickets, get you hooked up. We also have some walking tours of the Jewish history of Springfield. It's a fascinating walking tour. It takes a little more than an hour walking around downtown. It leaves from the History Museum at 2 o'clock on April 27th and on May 11th. There's 2 different times. And that can also be done by giving us a call at the museum, or you can read about both of those at our website, historymmuseumonthe.org. And then coming up the 12th of April, we have Girl Scout Day. And that'll be an all-day event for any Girl Scouts that want to sign up for that, from 10 to 5 at the museum. And as I mentioned before, Queen City Quest. If you haven't gotten your team together and get them signed up, get them in, or you'll miss out on that. It's March 29th at the Fox Theater from 6 to 8. Tom is going to be the MC, and I'm going to be one of the judges, I think. And we'll have a good time with that. You'll learn a lot. You'll watch people make stuff up and then try to judge whether it's right or wrong. So it's kind of a hoot. So be listening for all of that. And now we're going to go to a break. And you're listening to History Museum Presents Stories of the Crossroads. And we're back. I'm John Sellers, Executive Director Emeritus of the History Museum on the Square. And as we always do at the bottom of the hour in our show, I've got some headlines from the newspapers of 100 years ago, March the 18th, 1925. So, starting right off, a string of streetcar robberies continues with another holdup at gunpoint yesterday. People jumping on a streetcar, pulling the gun on the streetcar conductor, and holding him up for the money and change. The mayor recommends the purchase of 3 new American LaFrance fire engines at a cost of $33,000 for the 3 of them. Jury breaks ground for new women's dorm and library buildings on campus. And the long track tornado damage in Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, and Kentucky has killed over 1,000 people. It was terrible storms that ran across multiple states. And a committee is formed to study and acquire an airmail station and municipal airport for the city. So we'll be more following on that in headlines of the future, I'm sure. At the Electric Theater, we had Learning to Love and 2 acts of vaudeville. And at the Jefferson and Princess, we had Scaramouche as the movie to see. So that's the news from 100 years ago. And now here's somebody that's almost that old, Tom Trtan.
Cat Ballou.
Cat Ballou, thank you very much.
That's right.
The discussion we had off air, no one will ever know.
That's right.
Tom's with us today, telling about his career and how he ended up in Springfield. Came here to sell suits and ended up at the TV station.
Yes, I did.
So you've been there 40 years. You went there in 85.
In November, it'll be 40 years. I was gone for a little over a year and a half. I worked for Shoji Tabuchi back in the early, mid-90s for that
Play
length
the
of
accordion?
time. No, I won't go. The closest I am to an accordion now, it's in my garage, locked up in its case, and for all I know, the bellows have rotted away. I haven't opened it in years. Sorry.
Why?
Why? Have you ever heard an
I
accordion?
can see you doing a recital.
Okay. All right, John. I'm going to show up at the History Museum and make his story.
You know, the only other person I know that plays the accordion?
Yeah, who?
The former mayor,
Oh, which one?
Bob Stevens.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he's a big accordion player.
Ah,
So you could
Myron Florin,
yeah, you could have it play duets.
Weird Al Yankovic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Okay.
that may be the last famous
So
accordion.
they hired you as an announcer on the recommendation of
Ralph Plank.
Ralph Plank.
Yes.
And what was that like, just starting cold in a TV station like that?
It was, well, strangely enough, about 2 weeks before I was called in for a sit-down interview and everything, I had gone into KLFJ radio. Okay, and they were going to give me a little internship, see if I fit in.
Right.
And they taught me the board there and all that. Okay, fine. And it was an old, I think it was like steam-powered board. and I went into Color 10, and then I interviewed with Larry Blackerby. I mentioned him before. And he said, okay, we're going to have you cut some audio. And he gave me some copy. He said, go take it in the booth there. And yet it was the same board as in KLFJ that I had just learned how to operate. And I was able to record some pieces for him. And then I got the job. One of the first things that I did when I got the job was I had to record all of the
carts.
All the carts that say stand by, this is an emergency broadcast, yada, 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 yada. And I remember the last one I had to record, it basically at the very end of it said, please stand by. The next voice you hear will be from the war room. And that gave me chills like I have never had before, because Color 10 was one of the stations that could not go off the air. They were a relay station and all that stuff. So that was kind of spooky, having to record something like that as though, yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That's so you recorded all that, and then what was your day to day? I mean, did you go out in the field or anything? Or?
No, not at all, really. I did commercials and promotionals, different reading things throughout the day, program intros, but then I was also the public service director. So that within, I don't know, just a few weeks, they had me doing interviews on the midday news, and it would be with all the public service places, talking about their fundraisers and this, that, and the other thing. And I was the guy who would do those announcements. That was the scariest thing I had to do, to date, was doing live interviews on the midday.
Why?
I don't know. I'd been doing things in front of people my whole life.
Right.
It may have just been, if you're playing music and you have this instrument in front of you, it's almost like a character sort of thing. You're not interacting.
Right.
Well, here I was me. I didn't put on any kind of character. It was just me. So that, for a couple of times, scared me, because I do the things that many people who are afraid of, being on television or recording something for television. You have this little voice in the back of your head that constantly says, don't say anything stupid. Don't say anything stupid. Don't. Yeah. So there was a lot of nerves, but I got over them.
So you stayed as the station announcer, and then how did you end up getting away from that and into something else? Just
Station announcer and public service director. There was a young lady who was doing the weather on the midday at the time, and her contract wasn't renewed, and I went, oh, I'll do it. And it was just that simple. So I started doing weather, and then eventually said, I'd like to know why, rather than just it's going to happen. And so I went to school through Mississippi State University, and that was kind of after I got back from Shoji's.
right.
And I got my broadcast meteorological,
So
rating.
who was writing it before that? Who was writing the copy that you read as a weather person?
Oh, you basically go to the National Weather. All weather that comes out starts with a meteorologist giving you information.
Right.
And I would just read a synopsis, and I would see what the forecast was, and that's how I would do it. That's what weathermen tend to do
Right.
until they start learning more, and then you understand the why something's happening. And that's the important part, because then you can read the charts and go, oh, I see what's going on here.
So that was when you came back,
Yeah.
that was in,
97 maybe, somewhere around there. I know I got my certification in 99. And then I did weather and interviews on the midday. And then they broadened the morning show, which up until a certain amount of time, period, was just kind of headlines in the morning. But then they decided to do a whole show, and I started doing weather, and I did that for about 17 years until I moved into the position of Ozarks Live and now Unscripted.
right.
And I've been doing that, I don't know what it is,
So you
10,
were
11
the
years.
weather guy for 17 years.
in the morning.
You saw a lot.
Yeah, I did, but it was mostly with like one eye closed because it was that early in the
What,
morning.
what's the biggest thing you ever covered?
Biggest thing I ever covered was the May 4th, 2003 tornadoes coming through. And I went out to find, kind of report what was going on. And it was at 60 and ZZ. And I turned off a 60 because I could see the clouds over in the distance. I said, let's go there. And we went on ZZ Highway. And what I didn't know was 60 goes southwest and ZZ goes west. And so we kind of came over a hill and whoa, and there it was. It was an F3 tornado. And of course turned around and went the other way as quickly as possible. But that was one of the more exciting, if you want to call it, times because we could see the tornado coming right behind us. And the videographer was saying, "Faster, Tom, faster, faster, come on."
Wasn't worried about getting a shot?
Oh, he was shooting. As a matter of fact, the National Weather Service took our video so they could study it. It was for years when they had Tornado Week on the Weather Channel, you would have our video in that show. So people from the BBC even came over to interview us.
Wow.
Yep.
How scary was it?
Well, the thing was, when I was talking to people, because I got on a cell right away, luckily, because cell towers were absolutely jammed, and my voice was basically, well, yes, I'm seeing this, and I'm being very calm and everything like that, but inside I was going 30 different directions at one time and thinking, oh, please, dear God, do not let me die now, please. And a big limb raked across the front of our van, tore all the antennas off, and the van was rocking because of the inflow and just all sorts of things. It was a big deal.
So you were getting caught.
Well, yeah, it flanked us maybe 1,000 yards away. Now it's wispy looking, and you can see the little tornadoes in it, and wispy looking. And then I saw a video that somebody took from like a quarter of a mile away, and it's this big black funnel, and so it looks different close up than farther away. Yeah.
What a great memory.
Yeah, I guess it is.
We're talking to Tom Trtan, local weatherman, announcer, accordion player, and we'll be back after these messages.